Really happy to be here and share some of my battle scars from implementing AI ML. So I'll give you a very good example. I've been in this AI ML space when it was not even called AI. So way back in 2010-11, I built a chatbot and a contact center product at 27 AI, where we used. This is better? Yeah, okay. So where we used what was called at that point of time called predictive audiences to be able to predict things like, is the customer going to leave the site? What should be the offer, the next best action, recommendations in a chatbot product. And when we launched this again with Fortune 100 companies in US, some of the bigger retailers, banks, so on and so forth, and we did extensive tests, fundamentally trying to test the efficacy of predictive models for a chatbot and versus a rule-based systems, which were what was existing at that point of time. We found that the predictive audiences were fundamentally better at being able to predict customer behavior and that enables the chatbot to provide the right intervention. So this was way back in 2010-11. Very recently, in my current product, we are a customer data platform at Zeotap, which essentially allows customers to bring in the data from different sources, and we unify this data based on a number of different techniques, including AI predictive techniques as well for identity stitching. And what we also offered within the product are the concept of predictive audiences, which allows the marketers to use an audience that we create, let's say high-risk, low-risk customers, or for that matter, high-value, low-value customers, so on and so forth. And for the purpose of, let's say, further downstream action or activation, whether it's your email marketing tool or your ad tech platforms to target them with ads. So in this case, fundamentally, we found a poor take rate. And when we went back and looked at that data, why that was so in this particular case, it all boils down to the business use case and the customer segment and how those models are operationalized in the products. So in the first case, it was built into the product itself, and what we also had was a feedback loop of immediate interaction of a user with the chatbot, which really helped us optimize and learn fast. In the current product, again, even though our audiences are saying these are enterprise customers, ML and AI has evolved greatly. Right now, there are dedicated teams in these large enterprises who are trying to prove their worth and trying to prove their impact. So they were very reluctant to adopt our models, and they actually wanted to build their own and operationalize their own models within our platform. So there was a heavy pushback, again going back to the customer segment, business use case, the company context. There was a heavy pushback in customers using the models that we had created, or cohorts of customers or audiences that we had created using AI and ML, because their own internal teams wanted to implement their models. They wanted to have a much stronger control on the predictive audiences, how they were built, what criteria were applied, so on and so forth. So again, same technology, probably we are much further ahead with a higher degree of accuracy, but the business context is what really makes ML successful.
Just touching on that. Is it that this you realized this much later in the product journey, or that was there a organizational the process was sufficiently not responsive to that the pushback should have been coming fairly early, right, from your early testing customers itself. So what is it that prevented you from accounting for that?
So frankly speaking, we do have a very robust early testing program. We actually pitch our ideas to customers and we get the feedback back. Typically, the buyers of our product are not the data scientist team of the customer data platform, they are actually the marketers. The marketers love the ideas, but after we go into the account and we try to then offer these additional value-added features of AI, ML, predictive audiences, the pushback then comes from the data science team. They say, no, we can do it better. No, this model is not as robust. We need to have better control. They don't understand the business context as well as we, the data science team, does. So again, this is an interesting case that yes, there is a lot of testing and customer discovery that can happen before you build product features, but when you go out in the market, you might find that you have a different user and you might have a different customer segment ultimately influencing that usage.
I'll give two examples where we worked. We've been working with Venkata and Scribble of a problem which is very fundamental to our business. So what TerraPay does, we are a payments infrastructure company. For cross-border payments. Just to make it more relatable, let's say if you were to send money from here to your friend in Singapore, for instance, and whatever it takes to send the money and for your friend to receive it in their bank account or mobile wallet in Singapore, all the infrastructure that goes in terms of ensuring that there is delivery possible, fulfillment in Singapore, all bank accounts, regulatory approvals, foreign exchange, etc. We do all of that for these sort of companies, money transfer operators, mobile wallet operators, payment aggregators, and a whole host of these. Across various geographies, this business is very highly regulated. Cross-border payments is a very highly regulated business. So, and liquidities are inventory. So, we have to ensure we focus on real-time payments. So, we need to ensure that there is enough liquidity available in all payout markets, as we call it, for instance, in this scenario, Singapore, so that payments can be made in real time. Now, for us to predict liquidity requirements across 103 countries where we pay out is a massive exercise, and I'm talking of millions of dollars every day. Okay. So first, we initially what happened was, so I've been part of TerraPay since ideation. So I've done a whole host of these things, and I was doing treasury management as it was part of business which I was leading again. So every day we would try to, based on our experience and what we call tribal learning, we used to do this prediction initially when we were smaller, about 2020 I'm talking about. As we grew, because of the lockdown, 2021, business became 6 times. It became absolutely impossible to do it. So we, asked Scribble to solve that problem for us of predictive analytics. Now, what happened was, when you get, what Venkata was talking about, that high ML or what you call, the premium ML sort of solution, we thought that is the magic wand. Scribble will come, they have enrich, and it will solve our problem. We get something which will be which will make our lives very simple. So, and every morning I'll get up in the morning, I'll get a report or a use case, and or rather an output, and I'll tell my treasury team that go ahead now, start funding according to this. That didn't happen for almost 4 months. They tried a whole host of stuff but the variability factors, time factors, requirements, seasonality, a whole host of those things were so complicated. Currency conversions, that we had to actually drop it. And then, we approached that problem from a very different aspect. We approached that problem from what, we were doing from the tribal learning thing. What actually business requirements are. How much do we need, and how the seasonality works, not from just giving them a problem and asking them to solve, but being involved and then solving small, portions of it. Today, what we do, every morning now, we have the same output that we had envisioned then. But instead of just thinking that they've come with a magic wand and they'll solve my problem, and we slogged it out, for the lack of a better word, along with them. And now we have the exact same output. that we need. Every morning I have a report which comes to me, or I can go on TIP, which is the enriched platform for TerraPay, and I can see exactly based on my variations or seasonality or requirements, or what I need to move in every country across 103 countries. It even allows me to change parameters and regenerate those outputs of how much money I need to send. Now imagine, now I have 95% or 99% accuracy in liquidity usage. And instead of raising debt for the company, ask for a credit line from the banks, which is far more effective in terms of reducing our interest payouts. And that is where now I don't need to then justify the expense that I am incurring on using Enrich, for instance. So that is one problem. I mean, a failure, just expecting that ML will solve my problem and giving them a problem statement and some sort of context around it versus being involved day in and day out solving.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway in both of these situations is the business context. Who is the ultimate consumer? What is it that this person needs? And having a reasonable expectation of what engineering can deliver and cannot deliver. Now, one of the constant challenges I'm sure you have is the conceptual gap between the business, the way they have conceptualized, and the way engineering conceptualized the problem. Now, how do you go about bringing this? I mean, it took a failure for TerraPay to learn and adapt in a significant way. We don't see that happening as often in other companies. Can you tell us a little bit about how do you come in sync with the data engineers so that you are framing the problem in the same way, you understand the problem the same way, and you both align with respect to what impact and how to have the impact?
Sure. I've been in AdTech space. I've also built a AI-based NLP product for customer insights. So first and foremost is that again we have to decide on the business objective. Like what is the problem that we are trying to solve? A good example in case of AdTech, because of the scale and because of the need to do some of these decisions in real time, the goal would be is either to increase the relevancy, but you increase the relevancy through, let's say, and you measure it through, let's say, the CTR, the click-through rates of the ads, or, for example, the overall engagement of the user on the page, so on and so forth. So first and foremost is setting the business problem, and then when you business objective, and from the business objective, you have a number of branches of solution that will come. Some of these solutions will not be ML or AI or any of the data science based. Some of these solutions could be just a user experience solution. This could be operational solution. But there will be multiple branches of these solution statements which can be supported through our AI ML capabilities or ML capabilities. And the goal would be is then to run a series of experiments to actually test these hypotheses. Okay, if we do this, will we fundamentally move the needle or not? So this is a very, I would say, a cross-functional effort because ML does not, or ML or data science team does not operate in isolation. They typically will be working very closely with both business teams and engineering teams to operationalize their model, or even to test the model in a bit of a sandbox kind of an environment. So again, going back to setting the business goals, working with cross-functional teams to how that business goals can be met through different initiatives, and then tracking it back to singular experiments, or defining those experiments with hypotheses and testing them out in real life would be the best way to go forward.
This is like most of you would be capable of building a Ferrari, but the roads do not allow you to run a Ferrari, right? That is what happens typically. I've been an engineer as well, and in that context, one day I realized, and while I was working as an engineer at Accenture, that the work I'm doing on the SAP product is actually the problem which I have to solve will actually make a ship which is docked at a port move. If I don't solve that problem, the ship will have to pay millions of dollars of fine. So now before that I didn't know. I just thought that this is just a normal, issue, and I will solve it later today or something like that. Right? So you have to understand that the road that you have to drive on, what sort of vehicle will fit there, and use that capability, or to use your capability to build that sort of a thing. I have from my analytics team, Vinay and Rohit here, who are engineering powerhouses, and they work very closely with Scribble. Again, I'll take an example which we worked on compliance, for instance. Okay, what we need, what the compliance team needs, because we are highly regulated, is a very complex set of user analysis to tell them if somebody is doing money laundering by deception, or by faking identities, etc. And if there is funding of terrorism being done. So there are ways of doing it through static rule sets, which give basic results, and then there are ways of using models which are complex, which one of which is a very very widely used TerraPay use case which Scribble has implemented, and we have it has been recognized by UK FinTech, European FinTech, award bodies as well. Now that problem is a Ferrari problem. It actually needs a very complex, individual consumer level deduplication of identities to figure out what is required. And for that, we had compliance experts coming in every corner to solve that problem and solve it for one country, for one regulation, take it to a point where we are now at a very advanced stage. Another example, which is a very simple example, for instance, is a regulatory requirement called safeguarding. You have to ensure that you safeguard a certain amount of funds every day. Otherwise, you are in regulatory breach. Now, that's not a very complex problem, but it's a very business crucial problem. So, we implemented a solution which fits that, which is a report which comes to, our finance team, and they safeguard that by just looking at, okay, it has all the details and it safeguards it. Now that's not it's not like a pedestrian problem. It does need a significant amount of effort, but it is very different from the compliance problem. So what Malavika said, you have to have a very strong involvement of the business teams, and also make sure that the engineering teams understand the business. And that is why I took that example, my first experience itself, right? I didn't know what the impact of my problem solving could be. So you have to, as practitioners, as leaders of analytics functions or data science functions, you have to make your practitioners also understand what business you are into. If you are in research, if you are in core AI, of course you have to work according to that. But if you are in an industry domain, you have to make them understand what works. And we've had a very long most of my conversations with Venkata are actually around business, of what we're trying to do, and not on what is available on Enrich, for instance, or what they. We know that like I said, they have the magic wand. We know we need to tell them where to wave it and when and how to wave it. So that is very important. Please,
Saransh, can you talk a little bit about what is the governance change that has happened? Right. So understanding the business, all of that is something that even in the high projects we would do. Now that you're articulating a lot of these chota problems, sub problems,
and very high impact problems.
High impact, but very domain specific. What is the governance change that is happening that has actually enabled this to work much better than the larger problem? Right? Because the whole idea of initial was that we will have big teams, one standard team, and they will do everything. Now we're saying chota team in each functional or vertical problems, maybe. I don't know. Is it an org restructure? Take data science, slice it, put it in functional buckets. So what has changed?
Usually, it depends on the organization. Maybe an organization is very diversified, so that they need specific data science teams in specific functions. Most of the times, I don't think you really need that, as long as your team understands business context. and and there is enough collaboration between the product teams, the business teams, and the other functions in solving their use cases. For instance, compliance is not a business team. They are a very, specific role team, but they have a business case which is very important to solve. If you don't solve for it, your licenses will get rejected. You can't do business. You have to shut shop. That is the impact, right?
So how do you make it? I think what I'm missing for, I'm trying to think is, we used to say this also for large projects, right? But now we're saying take small projects, do very tightly, understand the problem. Idea of the process of ML hasn't changed. But now it does sound like to do so many of these things more tightly integrated, you probably have a different structure, the governance, the architecture for the team, tooling, and I think it'd be good to just pull out some of that from your experience that other people can take and think about how they are executing this.
How we actually go about very systematically executing?
Yeah, okay. So, in terms of execution, what we do is, first of all, we do with our teams and with, let's say, Scribble or others with whom we're working, get function heads to brainstorm. Okay? Get ideas, identify ideas, and have quick wins to establish credibility, first of all. And along with that, to say, for instance, this compliance use case, we had other use cases which we solved quickly to show credibility. And because if you're successful in those use cases which deliver impact, you can buy more time and credibility and more resources to actually fight the longer battles.
As an ex-consultant, standard consultant, I fully agree.
No. This is these are examples. So I live with a consultant, by the way, I'm married to, but this is not. This is actual impact. And that will help you instead of just battling with one long problem. So, for instance, when we started the first problem that I mentioned, and for 4 months after that, there were a lot of questions coming to me regarding whether this is the right approach, this is the right partnership. Okay. Now we have been together for almost 2 years, and it's almost indispensable. So you get those ideas, filter those ideas out, and then when you build, you have iterations and involvement of those stakeholders who are going to use it, not those who are only understanding it and are part of the function. Okay, those who are actually going to use it, and you take rejection from both ends. So, for instance, yesterday I was given a use case, and we said that, see, these are two very disparate systems. If you're trying to see something which is common, the way you're trying to do it is not going to work. It will not give the result that you need. But we will show you something which will, in two separate forms, which will fulfill your requirement. So that is telling the business team what we can do or what is the limitation, and telling the, analytics team or that if a business use case has come, we have to be very empathetic that this is the impact. So we give it our everything to deliver that output. It might need a sedan, it might need a Rolls Royce, depends. So those are the steps that are there.
People who have questions, I think, feel free to raise your hand.
So I will give a slightly bigger company picture. So typically in large companies, especially if you have established a certain size and certain teams, what we need to share at a company level, what are the key initiatives that each team is taking up, right? And how do, again, these line up to the business values? Some of these will be strategic, some of these will be tactical. Not everything can be a 2-year project, but yes, they are 2-year projects also, which we do, because fundamentally they will put the company in an entirely different, will open the opportunities for the company in a different trajectory altogether. And the senior leadership, have gone and presented in front of the board and investors as well, and then they do understand what are strategic projects, but even whether it is strategic or tactical, the expectation is that you have certain timelines and then you phase it out. How do you validate whether this idea is working or not? How do you validate this hypothesis is correct? How do you change that hypothesis? That is something that has become table stake right now. Whether it is a product team, even as product, I cannot go and say that I'm going to build this grand thing without having a business justification.
So is it like we're moving from waterfall to agile in like code term? Yeah. Now we want like simpler, faster, put something on the table first and then iteratively improve, which is how code development also happens.
There is
the whole MVP concept.
In all cases, I think the first ask of all of these enterprises from the business side is, as ML engineers, as MLOps engineers, you can't say that business problems are not your problems. And they are going to be messy. So you have to fold your sleeves, get at the table, and deal with all the complexities of solving a real problem. You can't say that I have a nice model, right? That can't be the language.
But that isn't that solved once, like size of the price, एक बार start में करके sign off of the project, and then you spend as much time as you want. I think the reason I'm making example from agile or code development is that there you're constantly sizing the price, right? How many ML models are ever taken out? So how many are, what is the iteration cycle of the ML process? When should I be refurbishing it? All those questions are still not there, right? Even in sub-ML or large ML probably has, but yeah.
So again, within ML also there are different kinds of problems. So for example, a good example is data quality, right? We deal with data quality day in and day out. Data quality is not a solved problem. You cannot say, I have built a model, I have launched this model and my work is done. That requires constant grooming. We know about model drift. We know about being able to, the model being able to learn from external signals. Sometimes these signals are very clear, sometimes they are not. So how do you set up the entire system, which is very similar to, let's say, any kind of platform, whether it is for ML or not. The entire platform needs to be set up for the ongoing improvement of the model. And how do you know that, okay, has your model performed well or not? Does it need to do some kind of grooming? All of those goes back to business metrics. And typically, it will need to be tied to either revenue, it could be CPMs, click-through rates. Again, I'm coming from a very ad tech background. If it is, if you look at sentiment analysis, it is around accuracy. A lot of times we have to, not everything is going to be automatic. We actually have to hire a set of people, ops people, who's going to sit and verify the accuracy of the sentiment manually, and that's get fed into the model again. Mechanical Turk, I don't know if people are aware of it. Amazon has this concept of Mechanical Turk, who fundamentally validate a lot of the recommendations that are provided. Are they even valid or not, in addition to whatever engagement they get on the platform itself?
Any other questions? I can keep
there are more.
Hi, this is Shanvi from Playground. This is one challenge which we face every day. So we have a close alignment with our business for all our data science use cases. But one thing which as a ML engineer or data science team we face is our requirements of business is quite agile or quite changing. Like for example, we do have cases where the objective of the use case changes within a short span of 1 or 2 weeks. Right? So what's your take on it? Is it like in such cases maybe ML is not there because we know what's the span of ML life cycle, right? So we take time to build models and actually go to actual development, right? So should we make the ML models more complex and more intelligent to handle such agile scenarios, or we should say this is not actually a ML, maybe this is more like you have to deal with the classical engineering way. So what's your idea on this?
Yeah. You feel comfortable with this one?
I think when your business gives you use cases and objectives, you have to do reverse interviewing them. You have to ask why, which is what as product we do to our business teams, and really understand whether it is a valid objective to apply ML or even to apply tech, or is it something which is very transient and not something which can be solved in the time frame that it will take to build it. It is true for any tech too. Tech cannot happen overnight. This is the conversation I have with the CEO. Is that if your customers are expecting you to deliver something in 2 weeks, please build your services, or it is not product. Products are not built that way. So that is a bit of a why that you have to ask to get to the bottom of it. Maybe what they really need is just analysis. Maybe what they really need is a simple rule building. May not be an ML solution at all that is required for the problem.
Yep, likewise, they are coming to you because they think that you can solve that problem. Now, perhaps it's not ML, perhaps it's just statistics, basic statistics, perhaps, right? And that is what you need to, communicate from your understanding. That, like Malavika said, ask them questions around what is the scope of this. How is it going to get used? Is how transient is this? What is the seasonality and things like that? And express your, point of view that okay, this can be solved in this manner. Just like our, for instance, our user persona use case, which is applicable in individual tens of millions of user personas changing and people using various identities versus a simple report which says okay, this is what you need to do every day. Yeah. And most of these complex use cases, at least what I have seen, will not change that drastically. They will have to be flexible, but they will not change that drastically.
Hi, Subhash here. Question specifically to Malavika because you're talking about chatbot, etc. So being part of a team that is building a conversational AI assistant, for example. So is there anything else apart from that's latest and that is more business intensive that can work from the NLP and NLU space?
So, let me paraphrase so that I understood the question here. Is your question that what is the next frontier for NLP? Is that the primary question?
Yeah.
See, I think they've just scratched the surface as far as NLP is concerned. Most of the products right now in the market, a lot of it is just association. So, for example, and even when I look at sentiment analysis, a lot of them are something which can be really improved upon. The complex emotions which happen in a conversation, they're still not picked up, and we've not even scratched the surface for vernacular languages. So if you look at most of the libraries that are out there, they're primarily based on, let's say, a set of 5 or 10 languages overall. I was trying to work with a Chinese company, and fundamentally they went with a local vendor because they just felt the libraries that were available and they were using word libraries from Google. They were just not sufficiently rich to solve the problem for them.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. So I have a question where bringing the business context to the my engineering team or the MLOps team, right? So directly bringing the entire business context, also the understanding level and other things, it varies a lot, right? So they may understand fully or they may not understand fully, or they may not we can't actually get to know how much they understood the business context. So what is the best practice on how we can overcome this kind of problems where I can't expect everyone to understand all the business context. In our case, what I usually we do is I work the domain side, business side, customer side, as well as the engineering side. So I come in overall. So now it is very easy because it is a smaller team, and I'll be able to from day one. I can't tell till the end because feedback loops it continues. So till we come to a certain level, at least being a guy who actually connect all these dots, right? So it is very difficult to get it all the time, and you will not get that kind of person who can do this all the time. So how I can simplify my business context to the MLOps team? Is there any best practice for them?
So, okay, I can very much relate to it because, like you mentioned, I was part of TerraPay from day one, so I've been part of various functions, including business, ops now, CSM and analytics, and even compliance to some extent. What happens is, or the practice that we have is for each use case that when we start, we get the relevant team from the tech side to be involved in a very thorough, interaction. And we have smaller but frequent, involvement of the business side in when the output of the model, when the use case, output starts showing. And that is not like after 3 months we suddenly show up. No, every 2 weeks you have that discussion. Yes, it might take a bandwidth initially, but then it yields results much better. So you have shorter interactions, but you keep getting that feedback. So it has reached a point where Rohit and Renan are sitting here. They know completely what for instance the treasury team does, and they can think from that perspective. So that is one approach that, perhaps you need to disseminate that knowledge also. I mean your experience also to those who are leading so let's say the team leads, and have that practice. From a business perspective, the other side of it is also that sometimes when the tech team says that this can't be done in this way, this is not a problem to solve for ML. The business folks also need to realize that they are not refusing to solve the problem, or they are not just trying not to take up any problem. It's not for them to solve. If you can guide them to where to go to solve or how it can be solved and involve them, that is fabulous. Otherwise, for business also has to realize there are many times when we tell them that okay, this is not a problem to be solved in this way, or for you have to solve this problem in another way. That's all. So both have to be from a tech side as well as from a business side, or from a user side. Instead of saying business all the time, user side, you have to understand the other perspective as well, which is very important. That's my.
We'll take the questions offline.
So fundamentally, I think this kind of problem will not only happen in case of ML, but it actually happens in case of tech as well, right? I mean, how do you translate the context to engineers? So there are different ways of doing it. See, I personally believe that the leaders of the organization, so let's say that my colleagues, which is VP engineering or CTOs, or for that matter, chief data officers or chief data scientists in the company, all of them we all should have a combined view of the customer persona and the problems that we are solving. And I always encourage the tech as well as the data science team to actually go and try out the product for them to get a much better view and understanding of it. There will be cases where there will be gap in understanding of the business context. But those are the best ways for us to solve those is by again thorough planning. Again, this is where product management comes into the picture, and why product management is important is being able to translate that from, let's say, a very business context to data or a tech context, and fundamentally also giving an exposure to the teams, to at least in my case, because I have heavily worked in B2B companies. So in my case, is giving them exposure to the customers, getting them into the customer conversations. We do a lot of QBRs where the product, the design, the tech teams, we all go and understand. We do a lot of co-discovery with customers. We have customer advisory boards where we can ask a lot of open-ended conversations. So those are the ways in which you have to bridge the gap. There will always be a certain set of engineers and data scientists who want to work on the craft, but frankly speaking, from my experience, the one who actually grow in their careers are the ones who are able to translate and speak the language of cross-functional teams.
Yes. Let's end it here. I think fantastic that you had that last message. This is exactly what I was going to say, which is that the era of pure MLOps as a technical function is done. The era that we are entering is one of interdisciplinary cooperation and delivery within a larger business context. If you look at all the people who are getting fired today, right, the different teams, one of the big contributing factors is silence of the teams. So your future is in figuring out how best to have good interactions with the business.